Tri-State Stacks back with another Playing Around with Playbook. So today we're going to be talking with the amazing educator and bassist, Bethany Robinson. So let's just give her a second to get on the live. Hi, Bethany. Hi.
How's it going?
It's great. How are you?
Great. It's so nice to be with you today.
Yes, of course. It's so great to meet you. If you don't know me yet, my name is Trista Ford. I'm a studying tenor saxophonist and music educator in the city right now. I'm working at Playbook. I'm so happy to be talking with you. So let me just introduce you for our audience. Bethany Robinson began teaching music in 2005 at Noblesville Schools and currently serves as the jazz band director and assistant band director. She is chair-elect for the NAFME Jazz Council, so cool, and president of the Indiana Jazz Educators Association. Robinson was named 2014 Indiana Jazz Educator of the Year, 2015 Noblesville Teacher of the Year, and was a 2016 Indiana Teacher of the Year semifinalist. She is a two-time Lilly Teacher Creativity Fellow, receiving grants to study jazz and culture in both the U.S. and Brazil. Each spring, Bethany helps to lead the Indiana Jazz Girls Day event, hosting workshops and side-by-side concerts for students around the state of Indiana alongside professional musicians to elevate leaders through jazz. Bethany is a semifinalist for the 2022 Grammy Music Educator Award. Woo, everyone go vote! And was a keynote speaker for the 2021 Australia National Band and Orchestra Conference in September. She spends her time outside the classroom playing upright and electric bass in the Indianapolis area. Wow, awesome stuff, Bethany. So awesome to have you here. To get us started, I want to ask our staple Playbook question. What have you been listening to lately?
Okay, what have I been listening to? So for me, it's always a mix of what I want to listen to, what I'm hoping my students will get into, and then generally what gigs I have coming up. So I can go through those few things. So one of the newer albums I'm listening to right now is Kurt Elling and Charlie Hunter. They have a new album out called Super Blue, and it's a little bit, I think, of a departure from some of the stuff I'm used to from Kurt Elling, but having Charlie Hunter in there, it's a little more funky. Anyway, I'm really enjoying that album. And for my students, we are listening to a lot of jazz at Lincoln Center, like the Live in Cuba album is one of my favorites. And trying to get them, also introducing them to people like Roy Hargrove. Like we just started listening as they were coming in the classroom the last couple weeks. And also we have a guest artist coming up in our concert next week. And one of her big influences kind of starting in jazz was Maceo Parker.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Maceo Parker and James Brown, and sort of opening that world up to them as well. And for upcoming gigs, I have a few holiday shows. So I'm already in like holiday mode right now.
Mariah Carey mode it has started.
Yeah, especially Mariah Carey season. I mean, I'm not playing those charts specifically, but a lot of jazz is coming up. So I guess that's kind of a wrap of what I'm listening to right now.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. I love that Live at Cuba album, specifically that one. It's classic. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, I know your band has made 3 appearances at the ISMA Indiana Jazz State Finals, and the Noblesville Jazz was named a Jazz Lincoln Center, essentially Ellington Festival finalist, which is amazing. What was your approach to developing your jazz band and approaching jazz with your students?
Well, it's interesting because I came out of school I love jazz band, but I had my classical bass background. But what I loved most in high school, playing bass in a big band. So when I got my first band directing job, I was really hoping to do jazz band, and it took a few years, and then I was given that program. And there was one band there, and even though I had really high hopes for how well I would teach and how well they would play, I wasn't great at teaching at that point when I was first starting out. So it was definitely trial and error. I would give them charts that were way too hard, and then kind of realize, okay, where are these students actually, where are we starting from? And then trying to give them something that they would actually enjoy and have great performances. So I couldn't really start with Ellington and Basie. I had to like kind of go down to almost pep band type charts, and then just work through that. And then a couple of the grants that you had mentioned in my bio, the one that was, I mean, really life-changing was in 2011. I got a grant to go to New York City and New Orleans that summer, and there just happened to be the Band Director Academy at Jazz Lincoln Center, which I had never heard of. I just showed up, and all of a sudden I'm surrounded by all these people who know about essentially Ellington. I had never even heard of it before.
Oh, wow.
So and 10 years ago, I learned about what that was and watched the movie Chops. And they taught us just in those 4 days were so transformational for me. It was a completely different approach to jazz pedagogy. And so I felt like that's probably the first time I learned sort of how to teach jazz band from a culture standpoint and from, I don't know, even just a joy standpoint, you know, and movement. So I took those things home with me, and I just started one at a time. Guys, we're going to sing and dance before every class. We're going to try, even if we're not quite able to play Ellington charts, we're going to really listen to it and try to see if we can incorporate a few of these tunes. We really started with Count Basie and kind of moved from there. The kids really became about building a culture, not about just teaching music. So we did that 1 year at a time, one class at a time. I went from one jazz band. We have 5 jazz bands now, and it's been it's been all about bringing in really amazing individuals that know way more than me, that are on the scene playing, and just putting them in front of my students. And then not only are the students learning from them over the years, but I take a lot of notes, and I just watch all the things that they do. We're going to other conferences, amazing music educator classrooms, and just watching, you know, and taking notes and asking a lot of questions. So it's pretty much like a 10 journey of kind of starting from scratch and then just digging into best practices and taking, you know, stealing all the ideas I possibly can from other amazing music educators. I think that's kind of how we got to this point. The other part that was really transformational for me was, you know, our students finally did well enough that year we had jazz state finals. That's a relatively new thing in Indiana. The second year that we made we got one of the spots to go. And it was more of a festival. They didn't rank us or anything. But what I did notice, we played towards the beginning of the festival, and then we went and sat and watched all the other amazing Indiana jazz bands. The thing for me that I realized in watching all these other bands were their soloists, their improv was just a different level from our band. And I thought, well, since as a bassist, I'm not really shredded on crazy solos like I see these saxophonists and trumpet and trombone players. So I found some people in the area that were just really passionate about improv and started working that into the curriculum and bringing them in and making sure that fundraise money to really put that. So kind of identifying where we weren't measuring up, where we were lacking a bit, and not just being discouraged by that, but realizing, hey, let's figure out the path to get that skill in front of my students, even if I'm not the person to bring that to them. So that's sort of been my journey, I think, of teaching and trying to get students and myself from level 0 to trying to, you know, get to something as special, spectacular as the Ellington Festival.
Wow, that's really awesome to hear about. Thanks for sharing that. I'm curious, you said that you guys now have 5 jazz bands. It was different before? Was less jazz bands?
When I took over, there was one, and there weren't auditions, and it was basically any student who want to do marching band was essentially you know, so it was the classic, like 1 mellophone and 3 trumpets and alto saxophone, you know, a lot of drummers and guitar players. And so I just sort of, you know, you kind of start with what you have, and it really did have to be more pet band. We actually did play it back then, and decided, hey, next year, let's see if we can get, you know, an actual big, so that we could play the music that's written for it. So I started doing auditions. It's a really hard process to kind of start changing things when students are just very used to sign up for something and doing it. But I think it takes just consistency, a real plan, to sort of mold it into something that can, give students the best opportunity to leave here and to plug any college, big band, and feel like they have the experience and then go right into that or get scholarship. So it's all about preparing students not only to have a great high school experience, but to be able to move on from high school, also have a great experience.
Yeah, of course. That's really great to hear about, especially like, developing a band program is such an achievement, especially from that, classic setup. I'm curious because we talked a little bit about the Essentially Ellington Festival. Could you just describe your experience applying for that and like how you went about that?
Yes, 20 was really rough. I mean, it was really rough for everybody. So we came to school in hybrid. I basically saw like every other day is our normal. So if a particular jazz band Monday, following week Tuesday, Thursday, and it just rotates throughout the year. But because we were in hybrid, I essentially saw half of the band the first, the other half of the band the second. This was for every band. So Jazz One, the ones that were really interested in Ellington, they never met together during the entire year from 2020 to 2021. And there was one class had all the lead players, then the other class had all of the second and third players in the production. So, my lead trumpet player never got to play with the drummer. There was one class that had a rhythm section like the entire year, So the students, we decided to get together and decide what could we do. We could meet before school because we have a bigger space. My room is too small with COVID restrictions to, have everyone together and about that 6 feet. So we rented the auditorium or got that every once a week the entire year. And students were doing sectionals in their garage instead of winter around like fire pits. They were inside and enclosed, and they were just really, really dedicated. So we decided to make sure that they were full to forward. We were even our auditorium. It sounded like we were in a gym. I had a hard time for like how our audition tape sounded because we were trying. There was a set for the musical like in the middle of it, and so I had like one house in the back of the auditorium. Someone else was like on the front porch, and it was insane. Like you had seen, there was no way that this wasn't gonna fit. But somehow the kids were so dedicated, and they were like, "We have lost so much, so let's take what we do have left and put everything into it, and just see where it goes." And the kids drove up. They were 100% in, and I'm like, "If you guys are, we'll make this happen. We will do the recording. We will meet once a week. We will." Anyway, and so we got together, and it was on our spring break when they announced the Ellington groups. And so the kids sent me a message. It was so funny. They're like, "Can we meet in the band room today to listen?" I'm like, "I'm on my way out of town. Guys, why get together just to be sad?" Like, I mean, like we never like who makes ridiculous? Like I can tell you the schools that make Ellington. That's not Noblesville. But of course, I'm not saying any of this out loud. But I thought, that's fine. Whatever they want. So we rolled in. It's typical 2020 fashion. Half the kids are on Zoom in spring break. We were the last school. And I had lost track on my fingers. I was like, oh, that's it. Now we were the last. Screaming and hugging. I had video. Like they were just so it was absolutely and then the real work began. I mean, that was so exciting. But then we're, zooming in with Sherman Irby, and he was our mentor. The number of people that were like zooming in, having sectionals with us and having lunch, with like the trumpet section from Jazz at Lincoln Center.
Wow.
They did everything they could to get us connected, even though it was a virtual festival. And the whole community came together for the day that it aired. And we were the last band to play, but there were 2 sections and there was an hour in between at bedtime, and we did a concert for the community mayor came by and proclaimed it like Noblesville Jazz Day.
Wow.
Wow.
It was, I can't even describe how it just made what should have been the worst year in education and teaching music. It made it like one of the best years that my career had, that I could ever even imagine in my career. And it's just
I don't, we haven't met yet, but I'm a huge fan.
Hi,
I'm
Sammy.
just a fan. I know Trista, but Bethany, I'm a huge fan, and I know any friend of Mickey's is a friend of mine, but I went and did my homework, and I was just like, wow, one of the most inspiring stories, just like your ability to both be an incredible musician and then an incredible educator and then be a source of light for so many students. But that video you mentioned that the EE the day you guys got picked, I saw that video, that like brought tears to my eyes to see you guys just like just such an intensely strong and powerful and beautiful community. So I'm not going to say much. I'm going to let Tris do the interview, but I just wanted to tell you, like, thank you for what you're doing. It's like what keeps everyone else going. So it's so powerful. It's so powerful. And you guys definitely deserve to be there. So don't even try to say that.
Well, thank you, Sammy.
I'll say no more.
Yeah, it's really nice to meet you too. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we normally don't let fans onto the live, but we just happened to let Sammy in today, you know.
Wow.
I know, Bethany, you had mentioned something that we talk a lot about here at Playbook and that we hear often, and that I actually have noticed in my own career and like studying as a music educator, is that not many educators are taught jazz in their undergrad. So how did you go about learning that elsewhere outside of your undergrad?
For me, it was actually, I would say, a lot of trial, mostly error. But how I started was, I loved playing the bass, but even in my undergrad, I didn't end up going to a school that was, all they had was a big band. That was it. So I left school embarrassingly, not even knowing what a real book or a jazz standard. I could play any chart you put in front of me on the bass with a big band. And so whatever I was given by my educators, like I assumed that and I loved it. But, when you leave college and what are you mostly going to play in at that point is probably combos and, doing small events and things like that. I just didn't have that skill or even know that that was a thing. So I got called back from my high school to do to help in their director's combo for this big jazz night. And I was kind of nervous because I kind of put my bass down and I started teaching. I wasn't really playing a lot. So I asked, what are the tunes? Because I'll prepare the tunes. And so I got those and I prepared them and I went in. Well, the great Kenny Phelps was on drums that night. Steven, this amazing piano player in Illinois, was on the piano. And so we practiced our couple tunes. And then I looked at the program and I said, oh, who's your bass player for the pro band tonight? And they were like, you are. And I was like, oh, yeah, I instantly knew that it was going to be the biggest disaster of my life. And I was 100% correct. So what happened was, and I was just sweating and trying the whole time. I have a pretty good ear, but I wasn't in the world. I didn't know. So at the end of that gig, I'm thinking about what field I'm going to chuck my bass in, and set it on fire on the way home. But instead, the amazing Kenny Phelps took me aside and said, who are you playing with? Who do you hang with? Who do you play with? And I was like, I don't play with anyone. I'm new to the area. I just moved here. I just started teaching. And he said, find some people to play with. He's like, you would be great. And it was like that encouragement that made me think, oh, maybe I can start this new journey after college and start playing jazz. And so there was one of my friends had a sibling getting married and we were going to do the wedding music, and I got a real book and started learning tunes and listening and transcribing and playing along. And so I just started building, and as I was learning, I'm like, oh, I want my kids to learn this too. So it's like I'm a learner alongside my kids every single day, and so that has become huge for me because it's so much more collaborative. And it's not me telling them what I know, it's me guiding them. And then as we hit road bumps, or as I have a gig and I learn something, then I can come back and tell them, I learned this.
Can I ask about that sort of idea of being, always a student, being humble as an educator? Were there any educators you had that sort of instilled that mentality in you?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel like the best educators that I was watching and seeing were always either at conferences, like sitting and taking notes and listening to what was happening, or they were inviting other students in and like kind of mentoring. So for me, I was seeing so much mentoring going on that I thought, wow, the best people that I look up to are interested in like coming alongside people, not just being great and not sharing that, if that makes sense. So great Jana Stockhouse at
Amen.
Blooming North. I was seeing her, people coming in and out of her classroom all the time. She used to go and watch her teach, and that was so transformative for me. And now I'm at a place where I'm not just not understanding what I do, but kind of the how and why. I'm starting to kind of move into those levels at this point in my career. At the Butler University a few times this semester and talking to them about how to teach jazz from scratch. And I'm actually doing, you know, talking about building culture through warm-ups. I'm going to do a couple presentations at Indiana Music Educators Association conference coming up. And I feel like it's time for me to start sharing some of those things. And I love having student teachers come in. My favorite thing is having student teacher walk in and their first thing, I don't know anything about jazz. And then when they leave, they're like, I can't wait to teach a jazz.
Wow.
And that is huge because that's what I needed when I was their age.
Mm.
That's what I want to give back to not just my students, but young educators, especially young women who a lot of young don't and they can just come alongside someone who's doing it and has a good structure for it.
Mm.
They can plug in.
Wait, Tristan, you can't move to Indiana. We need you in New York. Don't get any ideas.
I don't know. It sounds pretty good over there.
No.
Bethany's calling.
That's right. On my class, always, and I have a lot of students and people that would just want to come in and check out what's going on here. And the cool thing is that when they leave, they're not like, that's unattainable. They're like, oh, anyone could do that. Like, that's what I love about what's happening here. It's about putting systems in place that you're just consistent and you're faithful to, and you just keep doing the work each day. And then over time, it just pays off because it's not just me passing things on to students, it's these older students that are passing on their culture to the younger students and doing side by side. I have a lot of my top students from Jazz 1 that will sort of be sprinkled in our Jazz 4 and 5, mostly our freshman groups. So we've got the youngest students in our school that are doing side by side with these students that are gonna, win a solo award at Ellington Festival. It's just really, really cool. And they can look up to them and kind of watch what they're doing in real time during rehearsals. And that's a really powerful thing around here too. That idea of mentoring, not just other people to me or me to student teachers, but even students to younger students. So it just feels like there's so many levels to that is what makes it so special.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for that answer. I really appreciate it. It was very informative. To close us off, I want to ask, why do you think that platforms like Playbook are so important in today's classroom?
One of the things that I've been kind of looking in and seeing what's going on. I mean, Mickey is the one that introduced me to you guys and kind of connected us. And so I feel like I'm just on the beginning of kind of figuring out all the things that you guys offer. He has told me so much about the different platforms of students being able to play along and mute certain tracks and have that. So I'm definitely looking into this and hoping that I could actually put this into my classroom as well. But I love this idea too, as I'm looking through your and sort of doing some research the last couple of weeks. The more people that educators or people that you are connecting to the platform, building this community. I think one of the most powerful things that musicians and educators can feel as they're going through the journey is that they're not alone and that they are connected, there are resources available, and having that idea that not doing it alone, that idea of connection, I think is what keeps everyone going, because there are difficult days, but if you feel like you're connected and you're not alone, you always have a resource to reach out to, whether it's people or whether it's platforms like Playbook Jazz. And that's why I think your platform is so powerful. And just from having me on, or from having Mickey on, like the people that we are connected to, we're connected, and it just grows this community, and it just reminds us that it's so much bigger than ourselves.
Amen.
Thank you so much for that. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Bethany. It was awesome talking to you and hearing a little bit about your teaching and your experiences. So everyone listening, go follow Bethany at Bethany Robinson Bass, and go check out her website, BethanyRobinsonJazz.com. And for everyone that does not know Playbook yet, come follow us at Playbook Jazz and at thisisplaybook.com. So I'm going to sign off now, but thank you so much again, and thanks everyone for watching.
Great.